Welcome to App Talk with Upptic, where we dig into the nitty-gritty of how to grow apps and games. We speak with industry experts about specific strategies, tools, and tactics they use to find success. We keep you up to date with emerging news and trends in the ever-changing marketing, games, and technology ecosystem. My name is Xander Agosta, Director of Marketing here at Upptic, and joining me today are my co-host,
Warren Woodward, co-founder of Upptic.
And our guest,
Emma Kong, Senior Growth Manager at EA.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Emma. Longtime friend of the pod.
Welcome, Emma.
Thank you for having me.
Emma
Yay.
is such a trooper. She's calling in from Korea, where it is like midnight, 1 a.m. her time. So if she falls asleep mid interview, we know why.
Hopefully we won't be that boring.
That's true. I'm very excited, so I won't drool out, but thank you.
All right, our first section is Industry Insights, where we do a deep dive in industry news. Quite a bit to cover this week. Warren, do you want to take us away with this early breaking news this morning?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're recording on Wednesday morning, April 20th. And after what seems like over a year of teasing it, Coinbase has finally launched their NFT marketplace. So that just came out this morning. So we'll be linking to a TechCrunch article, the title of which is Coinbase launches NFT marketplace in hopes of appealing to crypto and mainstream users. So just a quick poll quote from the article. 6 months ago, Coinbase, the largest crypto exchange in the US by volume, announced that it was launching an NFT marketplace, but provided few details as to when it would actually arrive. Fast forward to today, Coinbase NFT launches beta made with collections of NFTs on the Ethereum blockchain. So they had a waiting list that they've been building for a while. And I think that, they started opening up to this waiting list for people to actually beta test it. So there's a few interesting things. I was just checking out some YouTube videos of other people that were able to use the platform this morning. The most notable thing for this beta version of the Coinbase NFT marketplace is we all thought that it was going to be like deeply integrated into Coinbase as a platform. You log into your Coinbase account and somehow tied to the NFT marketplace, essentially buying from a custodial collection of NFTs that they would host. That is not the case. So this is basically just very similar to OpenSea or other established NFT marketplaces in that it's non-custodial, meaning that you have to have your own MetaMask or Coinbase or similar kind of wallet. You connect that to the site, and then you can trade and interact just like you could on OpenSea. So that centralized version of an NFT marketplace is not what they actually delivered here. We don't know if that's what it's going to evolve into, but that's not what it is right now. As far as features, the main interesting differentiating feature that we see so far, and there's probably more to come, is that they're trying to really apply a social layer. So what that means is, like, if you're looking at any NFT on their marketplace, you can see a history of comments from other users, and there's also going to be a system to message, I think, both the creators and the owners of the NFT through the platform. So, this is coming in hot, just came out earlier this morning. So forgive us if not all of our details about this are exactly correct, but we do think it's important to call out. So yeah, guys, I mean, what do you think of this announcement? Is this matter? Are these differentiating features meaningful? Is this kind of a flop relative to expectation? What's our hot take here?
I mean, I think the interesting thing is what you talked about is how it's non-custodial. And my guess that that's for regulation purposes, because basically regulators haven't figured out what NFT marketplaces are yet, and they're not on it in terms of really having a really rigid structure. And so I think my guess is that they're make an effort to separate the products so that they can have a highly regulated Coinbase core product. And then the NFT marketplace, they just don't want to let somebody else become the clear winner of. And so my guess is over time, these probably evolve and will merge. The social aspect is really, really interesting. They talked about, they're adding a lot of features like profile pictures for verified NFTs, which seems like what Twitter is doing. And then they're also talking about messaging and other features. And they're also talking about rolling out the ability longer term to be able to do mints and other stuff within their platform. So, I mean, it sounds much more like, to abuse this word, like a metaverse play, where they're really trying to become a linchpin of the ecosystem for Web3 in a way that they've been a financial platform before. And now it sounds like they're really throwing their hat in the ring to sort of move towards more of a social aspect, which is pretty interesting. I mean, we'll see. I don't know if Coinbase has some superpower that makes them good at being social.
Yeah,
personally.
that's interesting. I think another value here that's harder to quantify is just the trust of the brand of Coinbase, rather than, OpenSea had no history before, launching of its marketplace. So both the trust in the name and then the marketing resources of Coinbase may also be interesting here. Emma, do you have any thoughts here? Do you see that this is going to potentially bring more mainstream users into the NFT ecosystem?
I believe so. I think that social part, like they let people exchange their opinions and then message to each other. That seems like a community for me. So it kind of Reddit plus OpenSea kind of.
Mhm.
And then that will help all these people kind of understand better on this NFT assets and the creatives, because they will freely exchange their ideas and the thoughts on like what's going to go big or not, because it's fairly much like investment, right? So I believe that will be a great like advantage, or it be a good positive like note on their brand or the differentiation.
Yeah.
It seems like a really obvious like strategic play is like you'd want to become the community center for the NFT marketplace, but like you see the users need to see value, and that's the thing is like I don't know what the value that we're going to be generating here is that's incremental to an OpenSea. If they could pull it off, I think it could be a huge upset, but I'm not going to like put my chips on this yet.
Yeah, fair enough.
Point.
Cool.
What's next?
Our next episode is entitled, what is this from? Business Insider, entitled Meta will charge creator fees of up to 47.5% to sell virtual wares in its metaverse. Here's a quote. Spoiler alert, the title is a little misleading, but we'll get there. Meta will charge creator fees of up to 47.5% to sell virtual wares in its metaverse, significantly more than Apple charges developers on its App Store. Meta charges a platform fee of 30% for sales made on Meta Quest, its virtual reality system, formerly known as Oculus. On top of that, Horizon Worlds, Meta's metaverse system, will charge 25% sales fee. All right, so what does this mean? So they're basically splitting out their hardware and software and saying, hey, we're going to take a platform fee on both sides of that. So because you're using Oculus, we take 30%. And then because you're using our Horizon World, we're taking another 25%. So the obvious thing is, in the case where you're using one or another of these, so if you're using the hardware but a different platform, they would a different digital platform, they'd be still taking the 30% hardware fee. And if you use Horizon Worlds in a different offside the Oculus system, then you'd be taking 25% platform fees there as well. Now, they're trying to double dip. They're seeing decelerate revenue from advertising, and so this is obviously where they're looking to enhance their profitability going forward. And there is precedent for this, right? This is very reminiscent of the Roblox model, who take 50 to 75%, depending on various variables, of their developers' revenue. So it's kind of it's steep though, and that's the thing. It's like I don't think that this is ultimately something that's good for consumers and good for builders, and they're positioning themselves unfavorably compared to other Web3 platforms, which are at least trying to be a low-cost, decentralized alternative. I think this is the issue though, is at the core of this, what's going to matter most is user experience. And at the end of the day, users generally aren't going to give a crap about how much the developer is being charged, or how much they're making, as long as they're making good experiences. Developers are going to care, but if there are enough users on the meta version of the massive creation marks metaverse, people are going to go there anyway. So It's kind of, I don't know, what do you guys think? I have other opinions, but let's hear what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, you just touched on the first thing that came to my head, because thinking about this from a creator perspective, there's obviously this sticker shock of like, okay, if I'm going to have to give up that much margin to be a creator in Facebook / Meta's version of metaverse, why would I do that compared to another platform, like say Sandbox? But then the second thought was exactly what you said, which is like market share. So if Horizon Worlds and Meta end up owning such a vast percentage of the market share of this kind of ecosystem, then that math can work out, right? If say the fees are double, but the user base is 20x the next platform, then the math works in your favor. So it doesn't look good on paper, but I can see why people's hands might still be forced if you want to be a creator in the metaverse to still potentially, too big to ignore if they actually get adoption. Emma, do you have thoughts here?
I completely agree with you, especially like big corporate, their strategy, the first strategy when they go into the market is kind of trying to be like monopoly, right? So it would be a big market share and then monopolize the market so that they can do whatever they want. Just typical move, I would say.
Yeah. So there's precedent here, right? So Roblox is basically they're basically trying to replicate Roblox for their existing technology, similar to how they've done with Instagram and WhatsApp and other places, although they're building it in-house. So it's not exactly one-to-one. There's something interesting though. There are a few developers who are doing really well in the Roblox ecosystem. And that's despite the fact that Roblox takes 70% of their revenue. Now, here's the issue. There's not a lot of competition currently in the Roblox ecosystem for high quality developers who are like VC backed. And so there's a few of these guys who've done really, really well. But as competition gets worse and more intense, as people flood into those ecosystems trying to find users, it's gonna be much more competitive, and that 30% margin is just not enough to support a game studio. If there's a ton of competition, then prices are being pushed down, and we're seeing an arbitrage war, what we saw on mobile, which will happen over time. And so I think this might be fine in the beginning, but long term, I mean, we're seeing how hard it is for game developers even now to make money, given the intense competition and the raising cost of advertising. So, and you're just saying, hey, it's hard at 30%, but we'll take 50 instead. It's like this isn't going to bake out long term. Something's going to have to give. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, quick side question. Do either of you know anything about sort of adoption and user base for Horizon Worlds? That's not something that I have heard much about.
It's, I think, relatively small, but I couldn't give you a number off the top of my head. I can make some up. I kind of don't ever want to use it. So it's the unfortunate thing. Like, I'm so annoyed by these people. I'm just kind of like, dude, screw you.
Well,
unless that's like a really good reason.
That's kind of what I'm thinking about too, like to introduce these punishing fees before you really have adoption for your platform. I mean, on one hand, like at least they're broadcasting it up front rather than a bait and switch, but it seems like they have to sort of earn that user base, I think, before they can justify, putting that level of tax on them.
Well, and I think they'll have an advantage because they'll start doing really heavy incentives to push from the other platforms into Horizon Worlds. And I think that's got to be the long-term strategy. Say 3 billion users worldwide. I mean, they have the distribution channel that's better than literally anyone in the universe.
Yeah.
Anyway, any other thoughts here? Should we move on to the next topic?
Let's do it. Okay, cool. So next up, we have exciting development for actually one of our day one Upptic partners here, which is Exploding Kittens. So the headline here, this is also from TechCrunch, is Netflix to launch Exploding Kittens mobile game tied to a new animated TV series. So for a quick pull quote, as part of its continued investment into expanding its mobile games business, Netflix today announced it will for the first time launch a mobile game alongside a TV series from the same franchise. The game and show will be based on the popular Exploding Kittens card game. The mobile game will launch in May, exclusive for Netflix members. So yeah, news about the show itself, it was just recently announced. So they've got some big names attached to it. It's going to be produced by Mike Judge, and then some of the stars will be Tom Ellis, Abraham Lim, and Lucy Liu. So this is interesting for a few reasons. I mean, I think Xander, you have another article here we're going to tie to like the current state of Netflix, but it's interesting to see Netflix kind of evolving as a cross media or transmedia company where they're thinking about a launch of an IP happening across multiple experiences. And I think Exploding Kittens is a good fit for this potentially. It might not sound like it on paper, but we know that team well, and a lot of them have deep roots in Hollywood and in the movie and TV industry. So I don't think that this is going to be. This is something that might work out a lot better than it does on paper as far as like the quality of the actual show. And I'm a big fan of concurrent marketing. So like, I think that this can be like a nice cross-pollination if they're promoting both the game and the new show at the same time. Yeah, so I'm curious. I don't know, Xander, should we touch on the other article first and then discuss both?
Yeah, I think I'll briefly touch on the next one because I think it's relevant to sort of link it all together. So this is a CNN.com article entitled "Netflix loses 45 billion in value as subscribers numbers drop." Netflix now has 221.6 million subscribers globally. It shed 200,000 subscribers in the first quarter of 2022. The company reported on Tuesday, adding that it expected to lose another 2 million in the second quarter. The service was expected to add 2.5 million subscribers in the first 3 months of the year. Netflix stock dropped 30% when the market opened on Wednesday, instantly wiping out more than 45 billion of company value. Okay, so if you've been following Netflix at all over the last 6 months, one thing that's been really, really apparent is their deep dive into gaming, the headfirst dive into gaming as a new vertical. And it sort of makes sense because they definitely saw the subscriber growth dwindling and retracting before anyone else in the market did. And so they obviously needed an incremental lever for growth going forward. And so what they've done is they've spent the last 6 months or longer really building out an in-house gaming development team and publishing infrastructure. And they're sort of very early days. But it really, really makes sense in the way that they're looking at verticalizing the content, because basically they're taking an IP that's fairly well known from a game and saying, hey, we're going to in parallel develop in-house games and in-house they're publishing the in-house game and developing the original IP. I think that goes back to what you were saying before. I mean, this is the strategy that we're seeing from all the most effective content producers in the world. You mean, I think a very obvious one is Riot Games doing League of Legends, doing verticalized game content with their Netflix show. But it's a really good strategy. And I imagine that we're going to see this increasingly from every major IP holder going forward. I mean, Emma, you work at a relatively large game studio. Do you have your thoughts about this?
I think this is really smart. And then I want to like go back to the first article about like the exploding kittens. And my personal opinion, they spot on like which IP they should go for, and then like which target audience they should do this experiment. I personally love a cat, and I like, who wouldn't love to try this game if they fall in love with this TV series or animated TV series, right? So by running this game only for exclusively like Netflix member, they will be able to acquire new users as well. So it's like beneficial for both media. So I believe this was very smart move. And then I'm very excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it seems like they basically take it, and then this is me reading between the lines. I don't have any insider information, but it looks like they basically took the existing premium Exploding Kittens game and then put it over to Netflix and made some new unique features for it. But they're basically existing in two siloed ecosystems. So they're getting a lot of leverage out of products they've had in the past. It's actually a pretty good game, and we bought it and played it at the beginning of Upptic, Warren, because we were talking to them as a client. But I mean, it seems like a pretty smart strategy overall. I mean, any other thoughts here?
I mean, it's a good time for Netflix to have a new value proposition for its customer base. I mean, I have this stock chart pulled up in front of me, and it looks like war plus COVID just happened on the same day, all at once. And yeah, they can't keep, especially with things opening back up and how much competition there is for cord cutting. Netflix, for a while was able to grow off the back of just like having their first party content. And I think maybe the ceiling of growing new user base off of that appeal alone has made itself clear. And it really is going to be sink or swim for Netflix growth, I think, depend on how this gaming strategy works out.
Well, and they were a first mover, right? And so everyone sort of de facto, and now it's a bloodbath for competition. But
yeah.
In the same way, I have a lot of faith in Disney just because they're like amazing operators that are able to verticalize their content. I really think of Netflix the same way. I don't own Netflix shares, but I really wish I had. I mean, now might be the time to get in. But just about they've been able to pivot their business so many times, from like DVD rentals to inventing streaming to becoming one of the biggest producers in Hollywood. Like, if anyone can operate a verticalized games and entertainment strategy, it's Netflix. Like, I have a lot of faith in the company.
Yeah, I think one thing we're waiting for is like what is going to be the first hit like bundled subscription game. Like, I don't think in all of Apple Arcade, is it fair to say like we never had like a crazy breakout game from Apple Arcade so far?
Not that I know. I have a couple I've been playing.
This
just
doesn't come to mind. Emma's shaking her head no. Yeah, so I think it just depends on the content. If they have like I was going to say the Stranger Things for gaming, like obviously there will be Stranger Things games. We talked about that.
They're not very good. They have a couple.
But yeah, they need that though. They need that in the same way that The Mandalorian made people subscribe to Disney Plus, or Stranger Things for Netflix for the show. They need that for gaming, and I think if they can show that and actually deliver a great game, that does give a compelling reason, especially for like younger people, I think, to join as new subscribers.
Yeah. Okay, more thoughts here, but let's move on because we're obviously going a little bit long. I'll do another article entitled Microsoft. This is a tech spot article entitled "Microsoft is developing an in-app advertising system for free-to-play games." Pull quote: "Microsoft is actively working on new tools to enable developers to embed and sell in-game advertising space. While advertising in mobile games is nothing new, the offering would specifically target consoles and potentially PC players in free-to-play games. Microsoft has no intention of taking a piece of the new ad revenue, but instead focuses on building out a strong network and platform to provide more opportunities for free-to-play game developers to connect to potential advertisers." So this is like a really, really interesting strategy, I think, on a lot of ways. It's sort of a long time coming. They acquired a company a few years ago and have been beefing up their advertising talent internally. But it's a pretty fascinating idea that they would facilitate a brand advertising network and then not take a cut of it as a way of giving the developers on their platform ways of making more revenue. So it's like the opposite strategy of both Facebook and Apple. And all I'd say is it's really nice to be an oligopoly and have a really massive B2B business that allows them to subsidize their consumer products.
So Andrew, did the article mention Game Pass explicitly?
It didn't, but when you think about what this is, it seems like it's all part of the same strategy, right? Because they're saying, hey, how are we going to be able to monetize free-to-play games on the Microsoft platform? And if they're saying, hey, for Game Pass, we're paying you as a piece of the Game Pass in order to get your game on Game Pass. If you want to publish free to play, we'll have a set of tools that we can help facilitate you making money without us being in the middle. Then it's a higher incentive for you to get on the Microsoft platform, especially when other people are taking a cut when you're facilitating ads on their platforms.
Yeah, that's very interesting because we think again about that idea of just like user base, and if I'm building a new free to play game today, 9 times out of 10, probably 99 out of 100, I'm going to optimize that for mobile first. But if there's enough competition on mobile, as there usually is, and then there's this, blue sky on consoles of Microsoft providing this additional incentive of essentially like 100% ad revenue and less free to play competition, all of a sudden it's at least worth consideration. I don't know, Emma, do you see them offering this like ad revenue driven model, giving 100% to advertisers? Do you see that being a meaningful incentive for teams to shift more development resources towards Microsoft, like for PC, for Xbox, for free to play?
Absolutely, because like developer side, if we can save any dime, like I would just try it. That's why like we are experimenting like third-party platform payment system as well. So if we can, save 30% cut from, Apple or Google, and then it's all free, all the money that I raise, the revenue side, and then I can get like 100% back. Like why wouldn't I,
Yeah, and you probably have some unique perspective on this, being at a company like EA that is shipping maybe the same IP to all of these platforms. So I'm sure you can't share any numbers, but you probably have some thoughts about like how that revenue breaks down today, and maybe how those numbers might be adjusted if you also had ad revenue available on PC and console.
I see Microsoft has they're such a brilliant operator, and they're looking towards the future. What they're seeing is a future that is multi-platform, and what they want to say is, hey, at the end of the day, we don't care what device you're operating on, if it's your PC, if it's your game. We want you to be in the Microsoft ecosystem, and we want to be the place where all developers want to develop for on the Microsoft ecosystem. And you can see that in the way that they're positioning Game Pass. They're buying Activision. They're really trying to position themselves as basically the place where gamers want to be, and the value prop is there. I mean, the Game Pass value prop is like basically unparalleled, and so it really makes sense that they're just trying to now develop tools to make sure that more and more people are available on the platform. And as the iPhone, as we move forward, I mean, they're one of the best positioned in order to continue to grow as a games company. I mean, again, just standard pumping its bags. But anyway, any final thoughts on the industry insight section?
I think
Cool.
we're good.
Well, let's move on to our main topic, where we'll be talking about calling this unifying growth, the growth pillars, UA, data, creative, and in parentheses tech. So quite a bit to talk about here. I know Warren's gonna have a more than average number of opinions because it's something he's thought about extensively. But just to kick off, Emma, will you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, where you work, and what you do?
Hi, my name is Emma, and I'm currently at EA as one of the growth drivers here. The main title I'm focusing on at this moment is Apex Mobile. Before I handled or managed like Sims, like simulation game, and all this like PVZ, some like free, like casual game side. But now I'm focusing on like shooting games, and we will soon to release the mobile in May worldwide.
Coming soon. Cool.
Cool.
So I think one of the things we want to talk about is sort of different disciplines within growth and talking about how we unify them. So, I think, it's critical that you have these different components together, and that's sort of the ability to combine these components in an effective way is what allows companies to scale. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you see as the core pillars of growth?
So when it comes to like growth, there are so many, it's vaguely defined, I would say, in industry, like across industry, like some industry think like the growth is just like purely monetization, like how to earn more money, versus some industry like growth means like retention, the engagement part. I would say in gaming, like we are trying to cover like both parts, like monetization and engagement, and also maybe some like the volume side. So I would say like the main pillars for growth is like I address like it's more of the like the data, product, and UA. Like those three are main pillars for growth.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's very similar here. So yeah, for Upptic, obviously, our role in the partnerships we have is basically for growing the player base of games, but with like high quality engaged users, where if we spend $1 to help a partner acquire a group of users, that we have confidence that player base will generate more than $1. So yeah, I think our philosophies are pretty aligned, which kind of makes sense because we also worked together in the past. But yeah, for us, it's like 3 clear unifying pillars, which basically align with what you said, which is creative, which is kind of the fuel that you're putting out into the world. And the second is the operational piece, which would often be called like the user acquisition team, essentially like the people pulling the levers, making the optimizations. And the third is the data piece. So this is like a combination of like data science and analytics, but essentially, the how you giving you what you need to make these decisions. And then between those 3 pillars is the technology that can streamline and unify process between these 3. So that's how we've always framed it, at least for top of funnel. So I think our philosophies are fairly aligned there.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because Emma's working in-house at a team, and so she's looking at she's responsible for a deeper part of the funnel, and I think we really focus on having a really granular understanding of how to drive top of funnel growth. But I think largely this discussion can focus on the same thing, and that is one of the things I want to discuss is like it's really difficult to drive alignment across various functions, right? So especially when you have creative versus data versus operationalist, I mean, these people are doing different things every day. They're thinking about different things every day. So it's fairly easy to fall into misalignment. So what do you think of as key systems and processes for driving alignment across growth teams?
I think this is the smartest question that I recently got. And I am struggling a lot with this like inefficiency and misalignment between teams. I can't even like imagine like this growth team without cross-functional teamwork. But I would say like I work a lot with the studio team, which is like the product side, and also sometimes studio team works with the development team. So there is a different development studio versus just like engineering studio. So that if that happens, it gets trickier because now I have to communicate 2 different sides about 2 different, like a lot of different things. So like multiple studios that for product to cover product side. And then also internally within growth team, there's 2 parties looking at the revenue side. Like how can we create more money? How can we print out more money, like monetization part? And then the other side is the cost side. How can we save some money? Like how can we be more efficient in our marketing? So they're quite often looking at like CPI. So whenever the CPI increases, they freak out. Versus like whenever the LTV plays out better, like it kind of get the revenue team or demand planning side of team like glorious. So whenever we plan something or come up with a new strategy, there's a lot of like argument or discussion between these like different multiple stakeholders. And I believe the key component or the how can we drive the alignment between this multi-facet angles or perspectives is like consolidating the communication channel, because a lot of times they do Slack, they do message me, and then they do text me, and then they do email me.
Yeah.
And then that kind of lost in a lot of the context lost in transition. And then because we speak different languages, it's quite often like it creates misunderstanding and inefficiency. So I believe, yeah, consolidating.
That's a good, really good. I was going to ask for really tactical advice, and that's like I think a really good one. It's sort of obvious, right? But I think we all are guilty of even like Slack Warren, and I should be in a major Slack channel or texting or calling email. I mean, email Warren. I want to throw it to you though. Can we talk a little bit about? I mean, you've run growth teams for however long, bajillion years, and we've now been working remote for a couple of years. Can you talk a little bit about how in the remote world you really make sure that all these different functions are like some tactical advice on how we can drive alignment across all these different functions?
Yeah, it's really tough. And Emma, you already touched on some really good points. Like it's like the oldest story, but like so much of it just starts with communication. And that's something that like the bigger your company gets, the harder that is to maintain. Like we started with Upptic as basically 4 people, and so it was very easy to like have clear communication and cross-disciplinary work between everyone. When we're meeting one of our partners, we're all jumping in the same car and driving there together, staying in the same Airbnb. But yeah, even now we're only up to like 20 something people, and you already feel the pain as close of a team as we are. So I think one is just fighting bunker mentality in many ways. So really encouraging for any leaders to, like, if you see that there's insular groups that are really only working and collaborating between themselves, and only building bonds between themselves, like putting systems in place to encourage like cross-disciplinary meetings and just like friendships and facilitating relationships. Easier said than done. I think the other thing is like how you build incentives, and as much as possible, getting the whole team aligned to this idea that like we rise and we fall together, that that we're going to judge our success by the success of all of our interlocking functions. And so that turns it to more of a conversation of like, how can I make my piece as strong as possible, rather than, okay, this is failing, like where can I point blame? Because as soon as you get into the blame game, and sort of like personal KPIs versus like project or company KPIs, that's when everything breaks down quickly. As soon as it's like, okay, performance is bad, maybe it's UA, no, it's product, it's like the monetization's too weak, it's that our creative sucks, like everything goes downhill so fast, and that's when toxicity really starts building. So I think it's very idealistic, but the more that you can preserve this idea of, no, we're judging our collective efforts, not our individual efforts, and do what you can with your piece to make it as strong as possible before you point a finger at anyone else. So these, I'd say, is my initial thoughts. Very idealistic, easier said than done, but.
Emma, you were laughing while we were just talking about misalignment and incentives. I mean, you're at a larger company, so I imagine you have a little bit more pain in terms of misalignment and incentives than we do, being so small as we are. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls that can arise? So maybe you can talk about a couple of things. One about like the pain that you've seen from misaligning of incentives and how you strive to combat that, and then 2, just what are some of the pitfalls that can come from those misaligned incentives?
And of course, we'll assume that we'll assume you're not speaking specifically about your current company, but just sort of things you've seen in general. Yeah.
I can't agree with you, Warren, anymore. But like relationship and also like the incentivized system, both are really critical. Like because it's all about like people, like we just, as a human, we work, right? And then like it's about like benefit, like what can benefit you and me. So it's been really hard, especially when I have a really large like group of people working together, like how to find a good like ground to work with as a friend, and also be friendly to each other, and also both mutually beneficial. I think the pitfalls can rise from this misalignment. Team is like unnecessary burden on like paperwork. Paperwork is painful, and also actually nothing resolved. So like a lot of people take in and then talk, and then they try to help. Good
Yeah.
intent, right? But then all the action conducted, but then nothing get resolved. That's the problem, real problem.
You're touching on another, I think, like nuanced but important thing that I see in sort of like dysfunctional larger teams, is the need, and this kind of comes back to like individual worth versus like collective worth, which is, say that there's a project where everything's actually going well, but you haven't had a voice in it. You haven't done something like say maybe you're a product manager, or whatever your role is, and you haven't really changed anything. There's some orgs where if it's like it's either real or perceived that like if you haven't done something, then you're not contributing. And sometimes the best thing to do is just sort of like acknowledge, hey, everything's going great. Like I don't need to have a voice here. I actually don't need to make a change here. If a company and people can be confident enough to just know basically when to not insert themselves, and this is something I've had to learn in my career, that can make a big difference too, because it's kind of another form of paperwork of like, oh no, hold on, this wasn't ran by me. I need to come in and give my feedback. I need to like make sure that I change a few things so everyone can see that I like quote unquote did my job, but maybe all that doing that job did was check a box and make that person feel better without actually improving the product.
Exactly.
When you sort of touched on something that I think is important, I see that problem specifically happening often at the executive level, particularly with new executives and in new projects.
Sure.
That's something where like if you can have a project that's going well and someone new comes in and it's like, oh, kill the game, kill the team, relaunch all the UA campaigns because I wasn't here to personally oversee it. We've seen that with clients we work with, and that's something I've seen across all my jobs and disciplines. Emma, do you have any more thoughts here before we move on to the next topic?
I mean, that's all I've seen, and then so far, yeah, so all good.
Cool. Well, so I want to talk about something, again, a little tactical. And so, a good growth team basically has access to engineering resources, generally, engineering, data, analytics resources. And one of the things that we wanted to discuss a little bit was the tension that comes up in any technology business, which is buy versus build. And so when you have a growth team that has the ability to purchase a product or spend internal resources on doing development, how do you evaluate the tension of buying a technological product versus building it internally?
Whew, great
big question.
I mean, I've seen we quite often just buy it, especially when we get stretched out so thin, and it makes sense just buy it and then test it, and then hopefully it works. Sometimes it saves us time and energy versus just trying to build something for our own, and then just waste our time and energy, and then it cost us more. But then also there is some items or some things that we have to build on for our own. We can't just like buy out only because it evolves around like company confidential, or also there is a different like incentives that coming from the executive side, like they want to protect some like IP or intels in the company. So I would say it depends on what we value or what we prioritize at the moment, like the company benefit versus like how much burden we should carry out in like human resources. So that is a deterministic, yeah.
Yeah, right, makes sense. I mean, Warren, I think this may be the core tension of Upptic is build versus buy. I mean,
right.
How do you think about this problem?
Well, I mean, I think like our view of this is pretty specific, which is, for our team, I mean, this is part of the fun of like, building something from scratch. And we kind of designed our team to be half engineering, half growth marketers, and for those two sides to work together. Our stance is pretty clear, which is basically like, if someone's made a great version of a product and we can afford it, it's cost efficient for us, by all means, we will buy it. And there's so many problems to solve in effective growth marketing. And this kind of ties back to this idea of all these interlocking disciplines and all the different expertise needed. We focus our engineering where we see unsolved problems or inefficiently solved problems. And so far that has served us well, because it always ensures that what we build will get used and will streamline a problem. The missteps I often see with build versus buy is teams outsmarting themselves. Like, we're a super smart team. We can clearly make this, so we should make it ourselves. Like,
or make it better,
sort of,
right?
yeah,
Or
or sort of so pride is definitely part of that. So I think for a lot of teams, what they're not factoring in is the ongoing cost of development and maintenance, and kind of what your company is set up for versus what a dedicated company is. So take the example of building your own MMP or measurement system for your studio. You might have some great ideas about innovation, but you might not be calculating the fact that the ecosystem is going to change. You're going to have ongoing engineering resources dedicated to the upkeep of this product. And meanwhile, like an established provider that just focuses on this, that's already where they have 100% of the resources. So you might build a system that's relevant and competitive and even better today, but if it's not a core function of your company, does it make sense to keep dedicating the ongoing resources to it while there's other companies that just focus on that space, while you could be making games and just, essentially outsource that development workload to a team that just specializes in it.
Yeah, and that I think very much ties back to the core tension that Emma was talking about. Okay, one of the other things I want to talk about, which I think, again, we're getting very tactical, and I think that's good. But what is the most interesting technological development? So, start with Emma. What is the most interesting technological development you've seen over the past year for? The question was originally UA, but let's say for growth marketing writ large.
I believe the UA, just this industry evolves very fast, and then we continue to drive new methodology and new technology into the current system. So there are a lot of things that it might not be new, like whole new paradigm or new shift, but still like we brushing upon like new methodology and attribution system, and just like, for example, like iOS attribution, like scan versus just like deterministic. There are lots of ways to interpret that signals, and then how to define our own methodology to attribute the traffic. That is continued conversation, but it's always fascinating to see like how the analytics and then data science come up with a new idea how to capture that properly. So I like that. And then the second is usually when we measure the success of the UA or the growth, it's quite oftentimes interpreted in like ROAS, like the revenue, right? But then now we developed some kind of the new paradigm or framework that how we can analyze the growth by splitting out the part, like the engagement part, and then the churn out, retained users versus like migrated users between the game versions, and new users. So by splitting out those users, and then how we can measure each part, like what action should be taken to make this component better. So that methodology was very exciting for me. And then the third part, it was just purely technology part for the creative. So creative production takes lots of time, right? And then quite often, like UA campaign can't even revamp, even though they see the market opportunity or like evergreen campaign, because of the shortage in like creative support. So to kind of solve that problem, what recently they come up, we integrated or they applied was the creative machine learning production system where like we upload all the assets and then they produce like different variants like automatically. So
have you seen that starting to be effective, Emma? I'm curious because I feel like that's something that's been promised in the industry, and there's been different kind of fledgling products of that, but it's like not fully realized yet. So do you feel like that particular technology you're seeing like getting mature enough to where it's actually driving good results?
I actually see a good example this this time, there was a because the Apex have so many legends, and then like we can create different variant videos emphasizing certain legends over the others, right?
Yeah.
But then the typical way for a creative team is just they crop out some of the legend and then replace it and then create a new videos, and then they repeat it over and over. But like this time, that system that we adapted did most of the job, and then very much be efficient with the time, is pretty much save the time and then like human resources, and then get us like I made a request, and then the very next day, or like it took it like 2 days only to turn around and get me the videos. Of course, the quality wasn't that seamless, I would say. I can see they literally just crop it out and then just put another legend. So
Yeah.
between that, it was quite of like noise there, but still it was functioning. And then the only thing that creative team needs to do was just kind of smooth it out a little bit.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And when we're talking about adding automation to workflows, I think that's always the low-hanging fruit you want to identify is like, do we have like a clear and repetitive task? And like, it's harder to find those situations for creative, but in the case of Apex, you had a clear situation, which is we have all these heroes, we want the same format, but we just want to swap the heroes out. So that makes sense.
Exactly, yeah. And also it helps like uploading part, the reducing the manual work part. So it automatically push out the assets to the media side. So I don't have to upload it on YouTube. I don't have to upload it on the Facebook library. They do it. So it also saves time.
Perfect. And that's another example of like easy to replicate repetitive work.
Yeah.
Good for automation.
How about you, Warren? Same question. What's the most exciting development of last year or so in terms of technology?
Well, I don't know if it's exciting so much as just sort of game changing, but it's really just and this kind of ties to another aspect of like algorithms evolving over time. Like they're not good enough until they are. But we saw that happen more over the last 4 years with all of the major user acquisition channels getting more and more algorithmic. And I laugh sometimes when I talk to a developer who hasn't been as in the weeds for growth the last few days, where it'd be like, well, what's your targeting strategy when you're going after users? And for better or for worse, it's usually like, well, you just turn it on and the algorithm does things, and it's more about like what you feed the algorithm. And years back, most of the algorithms were so bad that the teams that I would be part of, we'd put a lot of engineering resources to building like very granular optimization systems to where we could really fully own the optimization process and do better than these algorithms. And it really mattered then. But that has really changed. It's important to acknowledge, like as these algorithms gotten more advanced and better at achieving buyer goals, that where you should be spending your time, both your R&D and your human time, like that's really changed the process of where you're going to get the most return for investing your team's cycles in growth marketing. And like the easy thing is like biasing more towards the amount that you're investing in creative, because the creative itself is going to drive it's the lever of that becomes a lot more meaningful when you lose the other levers of granular optimization, and that's all in the hands of the algorithm.
Right, that's something we've seen really aggressively across effectively every channel, right? Or every major channel. Is all the reward video networks now have very good algorithms. Facebook basically doesn't let you do your targeting yourself anymore. They let you, but it biases heavily towards AAA campaigns. So yeah, it definitely makes a lot of sense. Cool. Well, we are getting close to time, and I want to move on to our App of the Week section. But Emma, is there any final thoughts you had on this topic before we move on? Nope. Great. So we'll move on to our last section, which is App of the Week. Warren, did you bring an app this week?
Yeah, I sure did. So my app of the week this week is TaskRabbit. So I think this app's been out for a while, but I just downloaded it for the first time this week because I am dealing with moving across the country and a lot of annoying little stuff related to that. And so I just started looking for good resources for just sort of like handyman, like odd jobs, like, so I found TaskRabbit and I signed up and I started using it, but it's a great app for just sort of like, you have a bunch of random stuff you need taken care of and you just need help with it. And so it's a good centralized resource. Like you can do something like, I need help, packing a bunch of stuff in boxes or moving a couch. And there's pre-selected categories, and it's kind of like Yelp in the sense that like you see individual reviews of the prices of people that do that kind of service and what people have said about them. And it's a pretty seamless, easy way to book people for all this random stuff. And so it's something that is just a good app to have like on your roster for just like all kinds of random, annoying, odd jobs and handyman things that come up. That's my app.
So I have a long history with TaskRabbit, which is pretty funny. When I first decided I was going to work in tech, I basically just didn't have any experience or any job. And so I just opened up TaskRabbit. And then one thing I had done is built websites. And so I just started applying to random jobs to build websites with TaskRabbit. And I would charge you like $100 to build a website. But I like sort of backwards felt and I got a bunch of reps in building these websites really cheap and got hired at a couple of tech companies really early on. And so they developed a platform away from doing that kind of work. And it was basically like I would request quotes, like sort of like, it was a whole different system, but I was a very, very early user of TaskRabbit. It really helped me get into the technology space.
Wow, a TaskRabbit success story.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, honestly. And it's not, the platform doesn't look at all like when I used it 1,000 years ago. But anyway, Emma, do you have an app this week?
Catch Table.
Catch Table.
Yeah, so it's a like restaurant booking app in Korea. And then one thing that it stands out is that it creates FOMO, just like how Clubhouse did, like, so it's all about like fancy dining in Korea. And then like people love to join like fancy dining and then fine dining these days. And then there is only limited seats available to reserve. So people literally just wait and go in to like get the seats, and then they pay extra just to reserve the spots. So that was that's interesting part of the system. Like FOMO is a huge thing in marketing. It's getting bigger and bigger. So that's one thing. And the second thing is it's called Cream, a used secondary market platform or an app. So it's also interesting to see like how people are getting bigger in like the secondary market, second-handed market. So that's another app that I've been using and then felt really like it's growing a lot.
Interesting. Cream. Yeah, I think I've heard of that one before. I've never used it. Cool.
But yeah, go ahead. I was going to say I look forward to checking it out, but it sounds like you mainly can only use the first one you talked about in Korea, right? For Catch Table.
Mm-hmm.
Well, next time in Korea.
Yes. Please come to Korea. Visit me.
Yes. Xander, do you have an app?
I do. As we talked about at the top, I am just coming off PTO and I'm still in Denver. And I realized after sitting at my aunt's house, who was 7 years old, that you couldn't figure out how the internet worked. And so I needed a place to work for today. And so what I did is I downloaded the WeWork app. And we used WeWork at Upptic early on, but the app's actually come a really, really long way. So it's super easy now. You download WeWork, you click a couple buttons, you book a desk, you can walk into the WeWork, you all set up, and you can go from not knowing what the heck you're going to do for work the next day to in a whole new city, have a really robust place to work. They store their luggage. And, WeWork has, it's been really, really nice. And WeWork is kind of a long legacy of sort of failing as a business, like very, very publicly, but their product is still like incredibly, incredibly good. You get the free coffee, you get the kombucha, and the app now makes it really easy to use. And it's reasonably cheap. I think I paid $29 for a whole day. So, I mean, I think WeWork is maybe getting their shit together and maybe they'll go public eventually. I don't know. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I always loved WeWork as a product, which makes sense because they were like losing so much money and basically what they spent and sunk into the experience for the users.
Awesome. Well, we'll wrap up. We'd like to hear from you. Please email us at apptalk@upptic.com. If you have suggestions for guests or if there are specific topics you would like us to drill into, please let us know. Emma, thank you for joining us today. If someone wants to get a hold of you or check out what you're working on, where can they do that?
Please find me on LinkedIn, Emma Pobekong.
Great. We'll link you in the show notes. Warren, take us out.
Yeah, Emma, thank you so much for joining us. We've been wanting to have you on forever. It's been great to see your career trajectory as you've grown into bigger and bigger things now at EA. And we're excited to see what you're doing with your next launch. So we talked a lot today about the 3 pillars of growth of data, creative, and user acquisition. And here at Upptic, that's really what we focus on. So both for our partners where we handle all aspects of that for them, and also for other clients of ours that just license pieces of our tech platform. That all being said, if you have a game or app that you are currently challenged with growth and looking for a team that can help you with all of those interlocking pieces, definitely reach out to us. We're always happy to talk. So you can reach us at upptic.com. That's upptic.com.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Talk soon.